Ring of Honor, October 2004. Ring of Honor Gold and Ring of Honor, Joe versus Punk 2. Yep. Talking a little CM Phil and Joey Samoa on the program today. We got two action-packed shows on one action-packed weekend. Speaking of packing, pack in, everybody. Take a listen to the episode. Come on now. This will be a wacky one, I'm sure. Hey, it's the Apron Bump Podcast.
Yeah. It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock this. Let's get started. Yeah.
Oh, fuck. What's up, everybody? What is up, everybody? I might just leave that in. Welcome to the Apron Bump Podcast. I'm your host, the hardest part of the ring, Kyle. How is everybody doing today? Hope everybody is doing well. Hope everybody is carefree, hernia-free, foreskin-free. If you're uncut, get the hell out of here. We got, I don't know, dude. Ring of Honor 2004. What we're going to be talking about today, specifically October 2004. Now, the last show that we actually covered was also October. But I figured we'd kind of bundle these two up here as they are one singular weekend. That's right, everybody. We got Ring of Honor Gold coming at us on October 15th, 2004 from Dayton, Ohio. And we got Ring of Honor Joe versus Punk 2 on October 16th, 2004 from Chicago Ridge, Illinois. So we got October 15th and 16th of 2004. We're going to talk about these two shows today. We're not going to talk about every single morsel on these two shows because, to be franklin with you, not everything is worth talking about, but there is a lot that is worth talking about. Like, I don't know, maybe one of the best matches I've ever seen. I don't know. Casual. But we got major cameos here. We got legends. We got great matches. We got seemingly some culminations of stories. We got furthering of other stories. My goodness. What isn't there on this show? It might be a better way of putting that. But yeah, we got a lot to talk about here. But hey, if you haven't caught it yet, I did a little watch along on YouTube for Samoa Joe versus CM Punk 2 that we'll talk about today. But if you want to watch the match alongside the hardest part of the ring, you can check that out on my YouTube channel at Apron Bump on YouTube. I'll try to remember to link it in the description, but if not, so you can just go catch it on YouTube. It's also on my Twitter somewhere if you'd rather watch it that way. But it was a good old time. It's spoiler alert, over an hour of wrestling, but we had a good old time watching it. And if you haven't, like I said, if you haven't caught it yet, feel free to check it out. I shared my screen while watching it, so you can watch the match. You don't have to do any double monitor situation. You don't have to sync up the timestamps. You can just watch it right there. Give the video a like. Give this podcast a like while you're at it. While you're just liking things, leave a comment, subscribe, follow, 5 stars, 10 stars, all of that stuff. Join the Discord. All right, plugs out of the way. Talk about some Ring of Honor, shall we? Ring of Honor Gold. First of all, it is called Ring of Honor Gold. Not because there's a lot of titles on the line, because I don't really think there is, but it is their 50th show, aka their gold anniversary. So Ring of Honor's 50th show. So we're going to be talking about show number 50 and 51 today, and that just lets you know how many shows. Well, of course, that's what numbers mean, Kyle. That lets you know how many shows they've had, but it also let you know how much content there is to absorb through the Apron Bump. And my journey through Ring of Honor, I started from the very first show, Ring of Honor 1, and I've covered every single show since then. So over 50 shows now that I have covered. So if you're interested, maybe you're not very familiar with Ring of Honor and you want to kind of get the context, how we got here, some of the rising stars that we've seen, some of the hidden gems, some of the just diabolically bad stuff as well in the early days. It's a very fun time. Again, link in the description if you want to go check that out. Or you can go to apronbump.com, go to the episodes tab and select Ring of Honor. And that'll bring you to all of those chronologically listed shows that I've covered, both solo and with various guests. I've even had Ring of Honor alumni, Monster Mac, HC Loke, among others. So feel free to binge away. All right, quit lollygagging. Let's get into this set of shows provided to us from the Ring of Honor, from the Honorous Ring. So we got a couple of major things on these shows that we'll pretty much mainly focus on, and then we'll do a little cleanup at the end here. But funny enough, all of the major happenings, now of course there's Samoa Joe versus CM Punk 2. We got other incredible matches that maybe are overshadowed by Punk and Joe 2. But I think one feud that can encompass this, that kind of houses this episode that we're going to be talking about today, one feud that ties this all together, Mick Foley versus Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. I'll just sit on that for a second. 2004 Ring of Honor. Yes. Highlighted by Mankind and the Dragon. How did we get here, folks? How the hell did we get here? Well, if you've listened to the past couple episodes, you'll kind of have a gist of how we got here. So Ricky the Dragon Steamboat has been appearing in Ring of Honor for a while now. He came in kind of as just, a guest appearance, just to kind of hype up Ring of Honor, put over some of the young guys that are on the up and up in Ring of Honor, putting over the talent, putting over the promotion, their style, all of that stuff. Because Ring of Honor, they kind of were, the foundation of it was the pure wrestling. It was kind of the sports-centered presentation. And Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, of course, is known for his bell-to-bell in-ring stuff, more so than his character, his promos, what have you. So the pure wrestling kind of tie-in between Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Ring of Honor was there. It was clear. But CM Punk didn't see it that way in the beginning. CM Punk saw Ricky Steamboat coming in here as almost like a leech, trying to relive his glory days, trying to hog the spotlight. CM Punk did not respect Ricky Steamboat. And Ricky Steamboat, in turn, did not respect CM Punk. He thought Punk had a bad attitude. He thought Punk was a piece of shit. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat prefers Coke. So they had a feud a little bit. They didn't have a proper match. I believe we're still under, Ricky's Lloyds of London kind of deal. I might not be right on that. I could easily research that if I wanted to, but I won't. But point being, they did not have an official match, but they did have what do they call them? I guess like altercations or whatever, where they would both be in the ring. This happened a few times. They would both be in the ring. They would have a little promo battle, and then they would scuffle. And more often than not, Ricky Steamboat would end up on the better end. A few arm drags, a few chops, all of the Ricky Steamboat stuff, right? You also have a couple shows where CM Punk laid Ricky Steamboat lane. He did the old Macho Man spot with the bell to the throat. Pretty brutal stuff. Him and the Saints all ganging up on Ricky Steamboat. But ultimately, over time, as the months went on, they gained a bit of respect for each other, because ultimately CM Punk, even when he was a heel, the sentiment, the foundation of his character was that, he was a pure wrestler. He was here. He respected the code of honor. He shook hands, all that stuff, right? So eventually they kind of learned that they were more similar than not. And now, as we sit here in October, Ricky Steamboat and CM Punk are on the same side. My goodness. But how does that relate to Mickey Steamboat? Mickey and Ricky. How does that relate to Mick Foley? This Ricky Steamboat CM Punk business. How does that relate to Mick Foley? Well, Mick Foley came in a few shows ago for the first time. Comes in and is, pretty much given props again to Ring of Honor, similar to how Ricky Steamboat did. But Foley is kind of more so putting over all of the hardcore stuff he's seen. The stuff with like Abdullah the Butcher and all of the Carnage Crew stuff and the Hit Squad and all the bloody steel cage matches and whatnot. And Mick Foley, a few shows ago, he dubbed ROH as Ring of Hardcore, which got a big pop out of the audience. He's putting over the company for all the stuff they do, all the hardcore stuff they're doing on top of the pure wrestling. But Ricky Steamboat hears this, and he's not a big fan. He thinks that Mick Foley, he thinks that Foley's style represents, quote unquote, garbage wrestling. He thinks it's not real wrestling. He thinks it's cheap heat, cheap pops. He doesn't respect it. Which, Ricky Steamboat, Mick Foley, you can imagine any wrestling fan that knows who these guys are, you can imagine that their styles, they don't really, they don't have the same mindset on wrestling. So it makes sense. It makes sense. And that all comes to a head on this show because they've had differing promos where they reference each other. But here on this show, they actually get in the same ring and they have it out. I'll just put it that way. They look to prove to each other that their style of wrestling is superior. So Mick Foley, of course, on the side of hardcore wrestling, Steamboat on the side of pure wrestling. So we got pure wrestling versus hardcore wrestling. And that, again, to me, now this could be me just making, being a little meta about it. Maybe I'm reading into symbolism that's not there, perhaps. But I think that premise, hardcore wrestling versus pure wrestling, represents this weekend perfectly. And this feud plays out, literally, explicitly right in front of us, but it also plays out through the matches, through the major matches. And that's very confusing, but it'll all make sense as we work our way there. And that's what it's all about, right? A great philosopher, it's one that I always quote, but they speak to me. A great philosopher, Miley Cyrus, once said that it doesn't matter how fast you get there, doesn't matter what's waiting on the other side. It's the climb. So climb with me, shall you? And we should start that climb with a night 1 tag team match. By the way, night 1, Ring of Honor Gold. Night 2, Joe versus Punk 2. I'll put the cards to these entire shows in the description if you're interested. But we'll at least touch on all the major bullet points here. So night 1, we got a tag team match. BJ Whitmer and Dan Moff versus the Carnage Crew, the team of DeVito and Loke. So the previous show, the Prophecy, I'm going to call it them. They're no longer the Prophecy, BJ Whitmer, Dan Moff, but the former Prophecy. Whose dick do I have to suck for them to have a tag team name? BJ Whitmer, Dan Moff. It's a tough thing to say very fast. It's just a lot of syllables and ups and downs and open mouth and closed mouth. It's tough, all right? Good thing I don't speak for a living. You know what I'm saying? So we got the Prophecy versus the Carnage Crew. Last show, Prophecy left Carnage Crew laying in trash cans. They did the whole gimmick where they put them in the trash cans and they beat them up with chairs while they were inside the trash cans, which is the hallmark of the Carnage Crew. So it was a little tit for tit, if you know what I'm saying. So now we got a match between these two. A regular match, by the way, I should say. Match starts. Immediately, we have a chair sword fight, which, I don't know if you have your code of honor on hand. I don't know if you have your Ring of Honor rule book with you. You don't have like a pocket book. But if you don't, I'll remind you, there's no chairs allowed in wrestling matches, at least in Ring of Honor. So it's an immediate double DQ, like within 5 seconds, which is hilarious. And both teams, they're swinging chairs at each other. The ref calls a double DQ, which is valid, I would say. Hot take, maybe. I would say it's valid. Both teams are pissed at the ref. Like, what the fuck did you expect? You dingbats? You're hitting each other with chairs. How about a hip toss? Loke, huh? Former guest of the Apron Bump. How about an inside cradle? BJ Whitmer, who might be in jail, so I don't think you're listening to this, but you know what I'm saying? How about a wrestling maneuver? Perhaps. No, you're just gonna swing chairs at each other. Might be on the side of Ricky Steamboat now that I'm talking about it. But we'll talk about that, by the way. We'll talk about my side of it who I think is right. But we'll work through it. We'll let this all play out, and we'll see where we sit. So both teams, double DQ. They're both pissed at the ref. No longer at each other, by the way. They're just like yelling at the ref. Out comes Mick Foley. Bang, bang! Out comes Mick Foley. Gets in the ring. Grabs the mic. Says he didn't come all the way here to, where are they? Dayton, Ohio. I didn't come to Dayton, Ohio to see a double DQ. I want a hardcore match. I'm going to be the ref. Ring the bell. Because I guess Mick Foley is the new fucking general manager, emperor, or whatever the hell of Ring of Honor. I don't know where he gets this authority. I haven't seen the paperwork. Where are his credentials? I'm a little skeptical that he even has this authority, but whatever. Guy rings the bell. Now we have a hardcore match between these two teams. And of course, they're brawling all over the ring and the crowd. There's blood, there's chairs, there's trash cans. Dan Moff hits a cannonball to DeVito through a table. H.C. Loke hits B.J. Whitmer with a sick tornado DDT off of a set-up chair. Blood everywhere. Everybody's bleeding. Towards the end, H.C. Loke is once again in a trash can. B.J. Whitmer, Dan Moff, bash him repeatedly with chairs. And they pin H.C. Loke while he is in the trash can, which again, not to question Mick's authority once again, but my thought is that if you're head first in a trash can, like it's down to his elbows, there's no way your shoulders can be on the mat because they're in the trash can. So again, I think we need to revisit this rule book and potentially make some changes. I don't even know if this match was sanctioned, to be honest. But whatever. They pin him in the trash can. Dan Moff, BJ Whitmer, they get the win. Foley grabs the mic again. He congratulates them, thanks the crowd. But you know who's not thanking the crowd? You know who's not thanking anybody involved here? It's old Dick Blood. Ricky Steamboat comes out. He's not happy. He grabs the mic, which whenever Ricky Steamboat grabs the mic, you gotta, brace for impact. He says, this is a bunch of garbage wrestling, and he makes fun because there's an actual garbage can in the ring. So it's like, hey, that's actual garbage. Or however Ricky Steamboat talks. Ricky's mad. He's kind of, echoing the sentiment that I've said here. It's like, this is bullshit. What the hell is this? Mick Foley grabs the mic. Now we have a duel on the mic, and Mick Foley versus Ricky Steamboat may or may not be a bit of a one-sided affair here, but Mick Foley grabs the mic and he says, now I forget exactly how we got here, but he ends up calling Ricky Steamboat Ricky the Soft Core Dragon. Because Ricky doesn't like hardcore wrestling, so that means he's soft core. So that means there's no genitalia shown. Strictly mish. Maybe a little areola. But no penetration. That's Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Ricky Steamboat, he's like, whatever, I've had all my matches with Macho Man and, the other guy. And then he brings up Ric Flair. Ric Flair, who, kind of just to recap the timeline here, Mick Foley, Ric Flair have legitimate heat at this point, which is, I think, what this whole thing is kind of playing on. It's kind of what it's leveraging is that I believe it was Ric Flair in his book. He called Mick Foley, he's a stunt man. He's not a real wrestler, garbage wrestling. Ricky Steamboat's kind of, and all for all intents and purposes, Ricky Steamboat's kind of like the conduit for Ric Flair. He's kind of the proxy Ric Flair here, representing Ric Flair. Ricky Steamboat, Ric Flair, good friends. They're playing on that. So Ricky Steamboat, he's like, all my matches with Ric Flair were better than anything that you've even attempted to do, et cetera, et cetera. And this sets Mick off. He's pissed. So Mick Foley, he challenges Ricky Steamboat. Now, again, we can't have a one-on-one match for realsies here. But each man, Mick Foley, Ricky Steamboat, are going to find 2 guys each to represent them. And the next night, they're going to have a tag team match with each of their 2 representatives. Mick Foley is going to find 2 hardcore guys. Ricky Steamboat is going to find 2 pure wrestlers. They're going to go at it, and we're going to see which style of wrestling truly is best. Because we could talk on the mic all we want, but really, let's settle it in the ring. So that's what they're going to do on night 2, which, who does Mick Foley get to represent him? Of course, the guys who just won that match we just talked about. BJ Whitmer and Dan Moff are here to represent Mick Foley. And the people representing pure wrestling, the people representing Ricky Steamboat, Chad Collier and Nigel McGuinness. Ooh, daddy choke me. So Chad Collier, Nigel McGuinness, both, Chad Collier has been here since the first year of Ring of Honor. He's kind of come and gone a little bit. Hasn't really had an extended run of any sort, but he's had some pretty good matches. Uber technical wrestler. If you're unfamiliar with Chad Collier, just picture Dean Malenko on steroids. And when I say that, I'm not like, oh, it's like Dean Malenko, but better. No, it's not like literally Dean Malenko if he, injected steroids into his anus. But he's a great wrestler. Chad Collier is stout, thick, dense, but can wrestle. Not the greatest promo, however, but actually, no, he is very funny. He's unintentionally funny because he's so bad.
Last time here in Dayton, Ohio, Ring of Honor had a 4-way extravaganza of the best pure wrestlers in this industry. And I tell you what, I had the most embarrassing moment in my career because I was the one right there in the center of the ring that tapped the Jay Lethal's submission hold. Well, tonight it's going to be different. Tonight I'm well prepared. Tonight I'm going to give Jay Lethal a lesson of his life. I'm going to make him tap because that's what I'm good at, because I have the precision of a physician when it comes to wrestling holds and human anatomy. I know which ways the joints bend, and more importantly, I know which ways they don't bend. And tonight, I'm going to take Jay Lethal and send him right to that hospital across the street and he's going to get plastic surgery on his ugly face. Hey, make sure he sees this right here, okay?
And Nigel McGuinness, we all know Nigel McGuinness. I mean, he's on my personal Mount Rushmore. We haven't even scratched the surface of what he's going to accomplish in Ring of Honor. But he's kind of on the rise at this point. I think it was the last show. He got his first major win against Homicide. So he has a lot of momentum. The crowd loves Nigel. He stands out. He's so tall. He's so long. The goofy, spiky hair, the different style he brings. The European style wasn't something that you see every match like it is nowadays. Like, he brought like a very unique style to the ring. So pretty solid representation here from Ricky Steamboat. And by the way, Nigel on night 1, he won a 4-way match against Roderick Strong, Matt Stryker, and Josh Daniels. So not nobodies. So he had a pretty significant win there as well. He wins with the Tower of London onto Josh Daniels. A really good match here. Nothing really specifically to bring up during that match. Ganging up on Roddy because he's a Generation Next guy, which is pretty funny. But I think Nigel, just watching this match, it was so clear how Nigel stands out. Like I said, he's so much taller. He's so much bigger. He looks different. He wrestles different. So he comes out with the win in that 4-way. And also got to give a shout out to Chad Collier, by the way. Night 1 had a match with Jay Lethal in which he wins with the Cloverleaf. Makes Jay Lethal tap out. Another really, really great match. One of the standout matches of the weekend. Honestly, I might throw this in the top 5. Great selling by Jay Lethal. Chad's attacking the leg. Is the ultimate pure wrestling match. Like, I feel like this is what the pure division should be. Jay's strikes were weakened by Chad weakening the leg. It is a very good psychology here. Very, very compelling chain wrestling and counters. Jay Lethal hits a headbutt at the end, but he can't capitalize because of the damage. And Chad wins with the Texas Cloverleaf. A lot of good near falls during this one, but Chad Collier gets the win. Nigel won his 4-way, and of course, BJ and Moth won their match with the Carnage Crew on night 1, which brings us to night 2. Again, Mick Foley versus Ricky Steamboat, and their 2 teams representing each other. But this starts out with another promo between Mick Foley and Ricky Steamboat. I think even is one of them. I think Ricky Steamboat straight up is like, hey, everybody else, get out of the ring. Me and Mick we have to talk. We have some things to discuss, right? Which again, Ricky, you're asking for, you're bringing a knife to a gut fight here, but we'll see. We'll see how it pans out. By the way, they're in Chicago. Ricky says, hey, Mick, hey, listen, no, I'm going to put you over. I hear Chicago Sanitation has a job for you when your next book fails. Come on now. Right? It's a good zinger. Mick grabs the mic. Says, alert the media. Ricky Steamboat has finally said something entertaining. Whoa. Right? We're shooting live rounds here, folks. Mick Foley once again kind of reiterates what he said night one. He says, being the best pure wrestler is like being the best softcore porn star. And then he says, how much longer, Ricky? Do you intend to ride the coattails of a washed up loser like Ric Flair? Oh, come on. Calls him Ricky the Softcore Dragon. Once again, Ricky Steamboat grabs the mic. He retorts. Says, Mick, you're no Ric Flair. Mick says, no, I'm right, I'm not, because I never kissed Triple H's ass. Says I never carried Batista's bags. And I never did stupid things like this. And then he does like the Ric Flair bump, you know, the face bump he does, the goofy little thing. So basically, they're having a promo battle. It's fun. It's silly. Ricky Steamboat and Mick Foley in a Ring of Honor 04 setting is just wacky on a bunch of different levels. But ultimately, we're here to decide which style is better, pure wrestling or hardcore wrestling. I like what we're doing here because, yes, we're dedicating a lot of time to promo battles between Ricky Steamboat and Mick Foley. A lot of time dedicated towards, past legends, guys of yesteryear, guys that aren't really going to contribute in the ring in Ring of Honor in 2004, which is, particularly interesting because Ring of Honor kind of leans on the heavy in-ring elements. They don't do a lot of backstage stuff anymore. They don't do a ton of promos, but we're doing a lot here. And what some people might look at that and be like, well, what the fuck, man? We're just trying to get big names here. We're just trying to make get a buzz about us by using these old timers. And I get it, but we're also utilizing the Ring of Honor talent to kind of showcase this feud, to kind of tie this feud together, because ultimately Mick Foley, Ricky Steamboat aren't wrestling. It is the team of BJ Whitmer, Dan Moff versus Chad Collier and Nigel McGuinness, which gets underway here. So match happens, match is moving along. It's a solid match. It's pretty, I would say, pure wrestling. It's a classic tag team match, a little back and forth, a little chain wrestling, tagging in and out, et cetera, et cetera. Nothing crazy. But about 5 minutes in or so, the Carnage crew comes out to just throw a monkey wrench into the whole thing. They attack everybody. They try to attack Mick Foley with a chair, but Mick Foley evades the chair and ends up grabbing the chair himself, starts swinging it at Carnage crew. They skedaddle, or they at least, go to the outside of the ring. And the ref DQs. He throws it out. Another double disqualification. What the heck? I mean, good gravy, guys. How many double DQs do we need to see this weekend? Ricky Steamboat grabs the mic and he's pissed at Carnage crew. And he says, and I quote, "Why did you ruin a perfectly good wrestling match, you dickheads?" Which this is the most saucy Ricky Steamboat one-liner I've ever heard in my life. Ricky grabs a chair and he chases them out, which is very ironic. Ricky Steamboat getting a little hardcore. Maybe hardcore wrestling isn't as garbage as he once thought. Mick Foley, once again, restarts the match. Because again, I guess he fucking owns Ring of Honor at this point. I mean, somebody's got to get him in check. But Mick Foley restarts the match. And he makes it hardcore rules once again. So that first little chunk was very pure wrestling. Now we got a hardcore match between these two fellas, or two teams. Mick Foley, he's even getting involved. He's hitting Nigel McGuinness with a microphone. He smashes Chad Collier with a chair. Bit unfair, because Ricky Steamboat's still chasing away the Carnage crew backstage with a chair. So it's effectively a 3-on-2 match, which doesn't really sit well with me, to be honest. Everybody's fighting all over the crowd. Trash cans are getting thrown everywhere. Eventually, they work their way back to the ring. Ricky Steamboat comes back, grabs the mic. He yells at Nigel, "Hey, Nigel, enough of this hardcore shit. Get back to your pure wrestling." And immediately, Nigel, he's cravatting, he's countering, he's doing the leg over the arm, the swoop, the loop, bing, bang, boom. Catches BJ Whitmer into this crazy jackknife pin for the 1-2-3. So Ricky Steamboat comes out here. He's like, "Hey, Nigel, remember you're one of the best European wrestlers in the world." Nigel's like, "Oh, yeah, all right. Yeah, you're right." So Nigel just immediately flips the switch, pins BJ with a wrestling move. And Ricky Steamboat is very pleased. He grabs the mic once again. He says, "Hey, Mick, looks like Pure Wrestling won. Hardcore Wrestling, goose egg." But we are not done here, ladies and gentlemen. We are not done here. Now, I will say, though, at this point, it feels like all of the Ring of Honor guys, the actual guys wrestling here, watching this, it's cool that they're getting, I guess, kind of a rub from Mick and Ricky. They do kind of feel like afterthoughts, though, which is my one kind of gripe here. But again, I think, it's a net positive for them, I guess. Because what's the alternative? They just have a cold match for no reason. At least there's kind of a reason and a rationale behind it. So I'm ultimately a fan of this so far. But we'll see. We'll see how it progresses. So that's kind of how this Ricky Steamboat Mick Foley has unfolded so far. Again, we're not really done with talking about it. There will be a little bit more sprinkles here later. But that's basically how it's played out, literally in front of us on screen. But this concept of pure wrestling versus hardcore wrestling plays out on night 2, I think, beautifully. Because we got 2 great representations of each style. We got Joe versus Punk, which is the ultimate, just pure wrestling clinic. A pure wrestling masterclass. As good, in my opinion, as good as pure wrestling gets. Literally. Could be the best pure wrestling match that I've ever seen in my life. I'm talking a match with no run-ins, no weapons, no stipulations, just 2 guys doing pro wrestling as good as you can potentially ever do it. On the other side of the coin, we'll talk about Joe and Punk in length. But a match that gets overshadowed by that match is another incredible match, but it's more akin to the hardcore wrestling genre. We have an I Quit match between Alex Shelley and Jimmy Jacobs. Now, you hear these 2 names, not necessarily 2 guys. Well, actually, I don't know if I agree with that. I was going to say not 2 guys that you would associate with hardcore wrestling. But that's not really true, especially when Jimmy Jacobs, when he progresses as a character, he kind of gets more into that kind of gruesome kind of genre of wrestling. Alex Shelley, he's had his fair share of ladder matches and all the Full Metal Mayhems and all that shit. So, but at this point, very, very young versions of these 2, they've been in, normal matches. They've been in, scrambly type matches. They've had one-on-one matches against each other. Alex Shelley has had pure wrestling title matches. So a lot of what these guys have done so far in their careers in Ring of Honor has been in the pure wrestling vein. But these 2 guys came in together as a tag team, both from Michigan. Came in together. They'd had a few tag matches together. That's how they were introduced to the Ring of Honor audience. But eventually Alex Shelley began to feel he was outgrowing Jimmy Jacobs. He thought Jacobs was dead weight, so they had a bit of a falling out. They've had some matches in the past, some pretty good matches. But ultimately, it's come to a head. They've been on the opposite sides of tag team matches and whatnot. it's come to a head here. I quit. Very personal. Again, good friends turn bitter enemies, the classic deal, but it's become a very personal situation. And now we have an I quit match to kind of solve their differences. This match, dude, this match ruled. I loved this I quit match. It felt like a fight. And that's one thing that's consistent between these two major matches I'm going to talk about. This felt urgent. It felt like these guys did not like each other. Felt like a fight. Felt like they were desperate to get the win. It's an I quit match. So you got to really be kind of extra violent. You got to be relentless because it's not just a flash knockout. It's not a quick submission. You got to make the other guy say, I quit. And that translated perfectly. It came through the screen. The energy of this match. Hot start. Jacobs runs off the apron to the outside. Hurricanrana to Alex Shelley on the floor. Then Shelley fights back, hits the shell shock against the barricade, which is like a Sister Abigail type of move, smashes Jacobs on that metal barricade. These guys are landed in the ring. Chairs are getting involved. Chairs all over the place. At one point, Alex Shelley hits his, okay. See, everybody know that Stephanie Vaquer move, the Devil's Kiss, right? It's the fucking let me shake my ass for you move that everybody pops for, that Booker T comes in his pants for. That move, right? The Devil's Kiss. Alex Shelley did that way before Stephanie Vaquer. But do you know what Alex Shelley called this move when he wrapped his legs around his opponent's head and smashed it against the mat? Do you know what he called this move? The skull fucker. The skull fucker, which is a way better name, a way more apropos name in my opinion. But yes, so Alex Shelley hits the skull fucker on Jimmy Jacobs onto a chair. One fuck after another. Just thrusting, bang, bang, boom, one thrust after another on this chair. Jacobs, he's trying to get back up. He's down. He's almost out. But he gets to his knees and he pulls a spike out of his boot. It's like, okay, this is getting a little real here. Jacobs pulls a spike out of his goofy furry boots, which is a bit, by the way, bit of a foreshadowing to a future Jimmy Jacobs character with this spike business, but more on that later. He tries to stab Alex Shelley in the face, but Alex Shelley blocks it with a super kick. Shelley takes the spike and stabs Jimmy Jacobs in the face with it. Jesus fuck. Alex Shelley continues to rake this spike across the forehead of Jimmy Jacobs, brings him to his feet. Jacobs tries to fight back, goes for the Contra code, which is a sliced bread, goes for the Contra code, but Alex Shelley counters it, hits a ridiculously brutal tombstone onto a set-up chair. So a chair was set up for somebody to sit down on, but nobody sat on it. Jimmy Jacobs got tombstone to hell through this chair. And then Alex Shelley goes out. By the way, he's not quitting. Ref's asking them if they're quitting. They're not quitting. Alex Shelley goes to the outside and brings out the first ever kendo stick in Ring of Honor history. Which, watching this in 2025 feels a bit like it's like everybody and their mother is using a kendo stick in every single match. But this felt significant here. It was really just Sandman's thing at this point. But Alex Shelley brings out this kendo stick and he duct tapes Jimmy Jacobs' wrists on the top turnbuckle. So like past the pad, like in between the pad and the post. Duct tapes both of Jimmy Jacobs' wrists to this pole on the turnbuckle and starts wailing this kendo stick at the back of Jimmy Jacobs, one after the other. Bang, bang, boom. Alex Shelley, because Jimmy Jacobs, he's not quitting. Alex Shelley gets up into his ear. It's almost romantic in a way, but he gets up into his ear as he's duct taped. Says, "Why won't you die? Why won't you quit?" But he gets too close to him, and Jimmy Jacobs is able to hit a low blow. Kicks behind him, low blows Alex Shelley. And then wouldn't you know it, Jimmy Jacobs has a second spike in his other boot, pulls it out, is able to use the spike to cut the duct tape, goes to smash Alex Shelley with this spike, but again, Shelley prevents it, blocks it with a kendo stick right to the face of Jimmy Jacobs. But Jacobs fires up. It almost fuels him. This kendo stick. Fires up. Big boot. Big furry boot to the face of Alex Shelley. And it's at this point, like, a lot of this sounds goofy, but man, I'm telling you, dude, the energy of this, it is just so, like, genuine. It's so desperate and urgent are like words that I often use, but I think that's when wrestling is at its best. It just hooks you. It's like, this matters. This shit matters. It's intense. Back and forth. Now we're just, laying it in. Just haymakers back and forth. Big boots, chops, knees. Jacobs smashes Alex Shelley with the kendo stick. But then Alex Shelley finds one of those spikes again. Hits Jacobs in the face with it. Now Alex Shelley has a spike in one hand, a kendo stick in the other, and he's just alternating. Spike, stick, spike, stick. Just one after this, just brutalizing this poor boy Jimmy Jacobs with both of these weapons. Left, right, left, right. Locks in his Border City stretch submission. Surely, after spikes and kendo sticks and the tombstones and all of this, Alex Shelley locks in his finishing submission move. And I really thought this was going to be it. I was like, that feels like a finish to me. But no. Jimmy Jacobs fights out of it. He's not going to submit. But is he going to pass out? They do the whole deal where it's a one hand, lifts it, drops. Lifts it a second time, drops. Lifts it a third time. I'm watching this. I'm like, surely, Jimmy Jacobs, he wouldn't quit. He's just going to pass out here. But they drop it that third time, and he doesn't let it drop. By God. Jacobs fights up. Headbutts his way out of this move. He said, now keep this in mind. He's in this Border City stretch. He's biting. He's headbutting. He's just doing whatever he can to get out of this move. But ultimately, he's showing his courage in doing this. Jacobs grabs that kendo stick, more shots to Shelley, and then locks in his own Border City stretch onto Alex Shelley, but Shelley has to eye rake his way out of it. My goodness. Shelley has to take that low road, whereas Jacobs took the more, I guess, courageous route, I guess you would say, with the headbutts and whatnot, whereas Shelley has to use eye rakes like a little pussy. It's just such good shit here. Love the symbolism there. Love the story they're telling there. Just determination from both guys, but they have their different ways of showcasing it. Shelley's taking the cheap way out. Jimmy Jacobs sets up a bridge of chairs, a chair table, if you will. It's two set-up chairs facing each other, then a chair flat on top of both of them. Goes to give Alex Shelley the Contra code onto it, but Alex Shelley counters it and hits some sort of like split-legged brainbuster onto this chair bridge, and then immediately locks in the Border City stretch once again, and then this time Jacobs says, "I surrender," which he didn't say "I quit." Again, not to be a stickler for the rules, but he did not say "I quit." He said "I surrender." So again, I think we need to revisit the Ring of Honor committee. If that exists, what is Serpentico back there? Whoever is running this, we need to take another look, because he didn't say "I quit." He said "I surrender." But ultimately, that gives Alex Shelley the win here. Again, I can't gush about this match enough. Just a great culmination of a story that's been told for a couple months now. I love the little things. I love the little but it's in between the spots that makes this match great. Because any match, we see a ton of car crash matches where it's just, here's this crazy spot. Now here's this great spot. Idle. Another spot. But this match, like in between the crazy spots, you have Jimmy Jacobs. He's like this wild man. Alex Shelley, he's like yelling for Jacobs to die. Like you feel the hatred and the vitriol between these guys. You feel the culmination of this feud, and everything just kind of came together here. It was athletically impressive. It was psychologically impressive. And I just had a lot of fun watching this. So it was the perfect amount of brutality and weaponry where it didn't feel contrived. It felt like everything made sense. Just great stuff. Great stuff from these two. And mind you, this is the match before Joe and Punk. So this match gets overshadowed. Again, I've said it a couple times here, but this match very much gets overshadowed. It's comical that it's right before Joe and Punk, which is like, how do you follow this I Quit match? And then Joe and Punk are like, well, with this, by doing this, which we'll talk about here in a second. But that's the end of the match, but we're not quite done here. Because again, we're still under this umbrella of Mick Foley and Ricky Steamboat. Alex Shelley grabs the mic. And when he grabs the mic, I'm like, all right, he's probably going to give Jacobs his props. We're probably going to have a little code of honor here, a little handshake, which, Generation Next, which is the faction that Alex Shelley is the leader of. They don't really do the handshake business. But I'm like, all right, after that, probably going to give him his props. We're going to have a nice little handshake, and then we're going to get off to the main event. But instead, where I'm expecting Shelley to show respect, Alex Shelley grabs the mic and he says, Jacobs, I'm going to make you wish that you died in your sleep last night, which to me doesn't come off very respectful. Maybe that's just how I'm interpreting it. But to me, that's I would say a bit aggressive. Is that fair to say? So Shelley continues the beat down on Jacobs. Roderick Strong comes out, Generation Next member. Also comes out to help this beat down. But then Ricky Steamboat comes out to make the save. Runs off Shelley. Runs off Strong. But then the Carnage crew comes out to beat up on Ricky Steamboat. So you got DeVito and Loke beating up on Ricky Steamboat, brutalizing him. They're preparing to give Steamboat the second rope pile driver, but as they're setting up for it, out comes Moff, Whitmer, and Foley. I mean, what the heck? These guys were going at each other soon before this. Now they're trying to save Ricky. They come out. Foley gives Loke a double arm DDT on a chair. Smashes DeVito with a chair. Moff, Whitmer, they run him out. So Mick Foley saves Ricky Steamboat with weaponry. So hardcore, as Foley puts it, hardcore wrestling was used to save Ricky's ass. So that makes it Pure Wrestling 1, Hardcore Wrestling 1, which, okay, don't know if it's a 1-for-1 comparison, like Ricky's team won like an actual match, whereas this was kind of just like a little run-in thing. I don't know if that really makes sense, but whatever. We have basically the story here is that, yeah, Pure Wrestling 1, Hardcore Wrestling 1. That's kind of where we leave this story this month. Maybe this kind of continues next month. We'll just have to wait and see. But I like where we're at, basically. I like how ultimately, yeah, it's two big names coming in here and used to kind of give Ring of Honor some buzz, but they're utilizing the wrestlers to kind of carry forward the stories. So ultimately, I like it. We'll see how it concludes, if it does, or if they just leave it at 1-1. I don't know. But that being said, so again, just kind of repat, just kind of step back for a second. We have Foley, Steamboat, their feud, their promos, their matches. But the overarching thing is pure wrestling versus hardcore wrestling. We just saw hardcore wrestling at its finest in that I Quit match. Jimmy Jacobs, Alex Shelley. Now it's time to switch over to pure wrestling. at its finest. Samoa Joe defending the Ring of Honor title against CM Punk. Main event, night 2. The show is the fact that they just called the show Joe versus Punk 2, which I believe this is the first time they ever did it, because it's always like Ring of Honor Retribution or Ring of Honor Night of Foreskin, like whatever it is, right? But this is like, hey, these two guys are wrestling. You're going to buy this fucking VHS or whatever the fuck. That's how good this shit is. To recap, just to quickly recap their first match, which, by the way, if you want to hear about that match in full and in great detail, go check out the June 2004 episode of the Apron Bump, where we gush over this match. We get deep into its guts. We talk about all the storytelling elements, the spots, the back and forth, what made that match so great. We talk all about it. So go check that out if you have not already. Again, that is June 2004. Let me just verify, because I believe it was June, right? Yes, World Title Classic. My goodness, what a time. It's a match that I would definitely recommend everybody watch, that first one, for sure. To recap the first, Joe, at that point, he had been champion for, I don't know, like 15, 14 months, something like that. Hadn't really been challenged, really. I mean, kind of, but like ultimately a lot of Joe's matches to that point had been pretty quick, been very volatile, been very, again, just big blows, haymakers. They're all relatively quick, very explosive, as Samoa Joe is. But Punk turned that on its head. He implemented a strategy, whereas every time Samoa Joe began to fire up and he began to get his combos and whatnot, Punk would just slap on a headlock. It was so relentless. It was comical to watch. It was compelling to watch. It was like the first 35 minutes of that was pretty much straight up that, right? But the way they did it was great. And we talk about that again in great detail in that episode. But then it fired up and it culminated, and the last half or so of the match really ramped up in the intensity, and the big moves were starting to hit. Near falls were starting to come. Ultimately, CM Punk hits the Pepsi plunge off the top rope, which nobody has ever kicked out of. He had Joe beat, but then that gosh darn timer hits. Time limit draw, where CM Punk had Joe beat with the Pepsi plunge, but was unable to make the pin in time. So it was a time limit draw. Joe retains. Keep that in mind. Keep that finish in mind, everybody. Now we're at match number 2. CM Punk versus Samoa Joe. By the way, this is night 2 of this weekend. Just give a quick shout out. Night 1, CM Punk and Homicide faced off against each other in a pretty good match. Homicide actually ended up winning with Rottweilers, his faction. They got involved, and then Homicide ended up hitting Punk with the edge of a chair. So he did it like Triple H sledgehammer style, where he took it sideways and jabbed Punk in the back of the head with the edge of the chair. So he actually ended up beating Punk, which was surprising, but then Punk ended up winning a main event 6-man tag, where it was Punk, Ace Steel, and Jimmy Jacobs taking on the team of Generation Next, which is represented by Alex Shelley, Austin Aries, and Jack Evans. Ultimately, that match culminates with Roddy comes in with a steel chair, tries to hit Punk with it, but Ricky Steamboat stops him, chops Roddy Strong, and then guides Austin Aries into Punk, where Punk hits Aries with the Pepsi plunge and gets the win. So CM Punk ended night 1 on a high note, getting the win with the help of Ricky Steamboat over Generation Next. And also on night 1, really quickly, we'll just give a shout out to Samoa Joe defending the title successfully over Rocky Romero, a guy who had been gaining some momentum as a singles. He's a tag team champion with Ricky Reyes, but Rocky had a singles world title match against Samoa Joe on night 1, which was pretty good. It was a little clunky at times. It was very interesting because Joe and Rocky have very similar styles, but the size disparity, their similar styles makes that size disparity all the more prominent and a little awkward, because it's if it's a smaller guy and you're using high flying, you're springboarding, you're drop kicking, whatever, But the fact that Rocky was just straight up, just, Muay Thai kicking and striking and all that stuff, it came off a little, I don't know. But it was a fun match. Ultimately, Rocky, he gets close at some points, big flying knee for a 2 count, but Joe is able to barely gets his hand on the rope to prevent the 3. Rocky, he locks in a flying armbar, which is his finish, but Joe gets to the ropes. Rocky tries that armbar again, but Joe counters it, power bombs him while he's in the armbar, and then locks in the STF for the tap out. So Joe retains the title on night 1. Punk ends night 1 in the main event, getting the win. And now we're here at night 2. Samoa Joe, CM Punk 2. Let's talk about it, everybody. Let's talk about it. Where do we even begin? Well, first of all, let's set the scene here. We're in CM Punk's hometown of Chicago, which there was various promos throughout the show where Punk was like, Joe, I had you beat the first time, but now we are in my house. You're in my yard. I had you beat. You couldn't beat me that first time, but now that you're in my hometown, that is going to be the variable that leads me to conquering you, Samoa Joe. Joe says, yeah, I didn't beat you, but you also didn't beat me, and I'm the champion. I don't have to beat you. You have to beat me. Which, again, is the fact that this is just so rooted in just pure wrestling is just so, it just, for whatever, it just feels like a hot commodity. It feels like a rarity that you just have 2 guys creating something so captivating and so compelling just with bell to bell wrestling. That's all this is. CM Punk's not sleeping with Joe's wife. Joe didn't run over CM Punk's dog. There's no, we're not dropping buckets of blood from the ceiling. We're not, whatever, right? Not a ton of like in-ring promos or anything between these 2 guys. Just wrestling. But let's talk about it. Match gets underway. The beginning chunk of this match, maybe first 20, 25 minutes of this match, very similar to their first match. Joe keeps trying to, explode out with these suplexes and these kick combinations, and some of them are getting through, but ultimately Punk is kind of stifling him with these headlocks. Once again, very similar. Punk's locking in these headlocks to try to wear Joe down. I would suppose maybe Punk thinks he has the cardio advantage, so he's maybe trying to wear Joe down a little bit and then trying to get him into a vulnerable position to capitalize later in the match. It's all sound strategy. It kind of worked the first time. Maybe you just need to put your pedal to the metal a little bit so you don't get a time limit draw. But ultimately, it makes sense that he would continue that strategy that worked so well the first time. But Joe knows this. And first of all, he's very frustrated because there's not a lot you can do, right? You're in a headlock. What are you going to do? Not a lot, right? Joe, he at one point, he's getting out chain wrestled by Punk. Joe scurries to the floor. He's pissed. And again, they're in Chicago, so it's a very pro-Punk crowd. People in the front row, they're heckling Joe. And there's one moment where Joe lays up against the barricade and he kicks the shit out of this barricade because he's so pissed at the people that are right on the other side of it. You can just feel the frustration from Joe here. Back in the ring. Again, Joe finds himself in a headlock. But Joe's had enough. Joey Samoa has just had about enough of this tomfoolery. He's in this headlock and he bull rushes Punk through the second and third ropes out to the floor. But Punk keeps the headlock on. Even though they fall into the floor, has this headlock on still. Relentless. Joe says, we're going to figure this out. Joe back suplex to Punk on the concrete floor. Ouch. You can hear just the splat, showing how desperate Joe is to get out of this headlock bonanza. Now we're in this chunk of the match where they're fighting on the outside, which arguably is maybe the best part of this match. That's not true, but it's a really fun match. It's a really fun part of this match. Now they're on the outside. It becomes more of a street fight kind of environment. Now Joe finds himself in an advantageous position. Punk tries to fight Joe with strikes, but Joe has the utmost advantage in the strike department, in the strike, in striking. Joe's way better striker. He's a bigger guy, stronger, more adept in the Muay Thai and the kickboxing and whatnot. So Joe is coming on the better end of most of these kind of strike offs here. But there's a point where like he'll chop Joe. They're on the outside. Punk chops Joe. Joe chops Punk. Punk comes back with a forearm. Joe comes back with another chop. It's very, very, very reminiscent of the Alex Shelley Jimmy Jacobs match, where it's just like it feels genuine. It feels like these guys are just we're not trying to make these like complex spots, and we're not using springboards in the apron. We're just like, hey, fuck you, I'm gonna hit you really hard until you fall down. Like sometimes that's all pro wrestling needs to be. Really good stuff, really good intensity on here on the outside. We got Olay kicks from both guys. Punk is using Joe's signature against him, but then Joe says, all right, let me show you how it's done. Hits Punk with it. One point, Punk comes off the apron for a Hurricane Rana, but Joe catches him and it does a powerbomb swing into the barricade. Whew. Now we're like 30 minutes in. Back in the ring. You can feel the grueling nature of this match. Just every move feels like it could end it. Every move. And if you watch this match, which I suggest you do at some point, a very prominent part of this match is the crowd. Because again, Chicago, they're going to root for Punk, but they're on the edge of their seat for this entire match. And it's a very long match. But every move, again, we're like 30 minutes in at this point. Punk hits or Joe hits a suplex from the apron to the inside of the ring, which sounds like a very rudimentary spot. But the fact that there's so much of a struggle to get that, because he doesn't just like pick him up and hit it. It's like Punk's trying to fight him off. He's trying to prevent this. Joe has to fight. He has to struggle to get him up. Hits it, and the crowd's like, oh my God. But it's because of the groundwork that they set before this, which is what makes everything feel important after the fact. It makes everything feel like a truly like important part of this match. It feels like at any point this match could end for the last like half of this match. And again, it's a testament to their ability to get the crowd to that point, to believe in every spot that happens. Because a spot is a spot. Anybody can do a spot. Anybody can learn how to do a spot. But it's the ability to get an audience to bite at every single spot and to believe that it is a spot that could lead to the finish. That is a true talent, and that is why matches like Samoa Joe and CM Punk are so good. It's not because there's not a ton of like crazy spots in this match. There's not a ton of like crazy sequences. This match, by the way, there's no sequences in this match. This isn't like look, I like the Will Ospreays and the Young Bucks. Like I think that type of wrestling has its place. And I'd be lying to you if I said that, All In, Young Bucks versus Ospreay and Swerve. I'd be lying to you if I said I wasn't into and excited at these like, dueling, like double super kick, double duck, doubles, hidden blade, swerve kick. Like that stuff's great, right? But they're choreographed sequences. It's impressive, athletically impressive. The crowd loves it, which is all that matters. But the thing that I love personally about something like Joe and Punk is that nothing feels like, oh, we're going to get to this point in the match and then we're going to do a double duck and then I'm going to catch you and then you're going to do that move to me. And it's like, no, this feels like they're just trying to like unload the most effective, the quickest, the most convenient move at any point. It feels like almost like it is pro wrestling, but there is a lot of like MMA kind of mentality behind this, where it's not like we're not doing the fanciest move, we're doing the most effective move. And that shit is just, it was so good. They're just getting so much out of the little things. And I talked about this. I'm actually, speaking of Joe and Punk, I'm gonna tie it to another match that I saw pretty recently. It's a match that we talked about on the Apron bump recently. King of the Ring 1997 from WWF. It was a random 6-man tag match, but there was a spot in this match that for whatever reason has stayed with me. It was a 6-man tag, Psycho Sid and the Legion of Doom versus the Hart Foundation. There was a spot in this match where Sid and Owen Hart were the legal guys. Sid was they weren't doing anything. Sid was like teasing this test of strength with Owen Hart, which is comical because of course Sid's gonna win that, right? But he's teasing it, he's putting up his hand for Owen Hart to grab it. Owen's like teasing it, but he's gonna do it, but then he backs off. He keeps doing that. Ultimately, they do it's like a minute or two where they're teasing it. And then ultimately, I think it's like Sid hits him with like a scoop slam, and the crowd comes unglued. Not because a scoop slam is impressive, but because of how they set how the wrestlers made you want it. They got so much. 1997, mid-late 90s, that is a common theme, is how everybody gets so much out of so little. How the little things feel so effective. And this Joe Punk match, the foundation of it had those similar principles where they're just getting so much out of these little things. Joe hits this lariat, just a clothesline, but it feels like it knocks Punk's rectum out of his mouth. I mean, the Punk's out. Crowd thinks it's over. It's just a lariat, but this could be it. It's not. 2 count, but it could have been. Punk hits this later in this match. Punk hits a DDT and then goes to the top rope and hits a moonsault, which the fact that Punk is busting out a moonsault shows how important this match is, shows how desperate he is. But he hits it. Crowd's like, oh shit, this is it. No, it's not. Punk hits a Shining Wizard. Oh my God, he's got him. Nope, Joe gets to the ropes. Joe's hitting his classic strike count combinations, leg kicks, head kicks, sweeping them, the jumping knee that he does, the sentons, all of the Joe classics. Crowd's into it. They don't want Joe to win, but they're into it. And we're about 40 minutes in, 40, 45, 50 minutes maybe. I don't know. I wasn't, watching the time clock watching this. Commentary just says, hey, I think this match speaks for itself. Let's leave. We're going to go in the crowd and watch this, which of course this is done after the fact. It's not like genuinely what they're doing, but the fact that they knew, which actually it's more important, the fact that it's after the fact, because they know that the rest of this match speaks for itself. And it did. The lack of commentary was a very interesting touch, and I kind of liked it because it amplified the intensity of every move, because you didn't have this backdrop of people yelling and saying what the moves are. It's just like 2 guys fighting. Does that make sense? It's not like, it's no longer this wrestling television show that I'm watching. Now I'm watching 2 guys battle it out. It just added, again, another layer of intensity that I really liked. That was a nice touch. I don't know if it's like a common thing that they do after this, but I enjoyed it. I will shout out Joe. The one, if I have one nitpick from this match, it's geared towards Samoa Joe. Joe is, you're probably listening, right? Joe, let me be straight with you. Can you be original? Can you do something of your own for once? Throughout this entire match, you're just pulling from the bag, constantly stealing from Jey Uso. The spear? Yeah, seen that before. The splash from the top rope. I don't think I've ever seen Samoa Joe do a top rope splash, but we see it here pretty soon after that spear. Interesting. And if that's not enough, towards the end of this match, you know what Joe does? He locks in a rear naked choke. I mean, yeah. Ever heard of it? I don't know. WrestleMania 41, the move that Jey Uso won the world title with? Yeah. So, I'm surprised he didn't yeet during this match. You know what I'm saying? So, Joe, come up with your own moves. Anyways, but outside of that, just a perfect match. We're at the end here. We're jostling on the top rope. Punk is on the top rope. He wants that Pepsi plunge once again. Because, again, he had Joe beat in their first match. He knows that this match could lead him to victory. But Joe knows this as well, and he won't let it happen. Punk's on the top rope. He pulls Joe up. Punk has the underhooks. He has it locked in. It looks like he's about to hit it. Crowds on the edge of their seat. They want it so bad, but then Joe fights out of it. He headbutts his way out of it. He's chopping them, and the crowd is like, oh, you could hear the guttural, like, disappointment in the crowd. They wanted that Pepsi plunge because they knew that would be the end of the match if that happened. So Joe fights out of it for now. Joe, because Punk is still in the top rope, he wants this muscle buster. The muscle buster is a move that nobody kicks out of as well. So he tries to lock in Punk into this muscle buster, but Punk, just the way that Punk flails his arms, bashes Joe in the back of the head and the back, just windmill punches, just very desperate. Again, very like, oh shit, I can't let this happen. So he fights out of the muscle buster for now because Joe gets to the second rope. He meets Punk at the top rope. Muscle buster from the second rope connects. 10 seconds left. What? Excuse me? Pardon? Bobby Cruz? Did you just say 10 seconds left? Did we not? No 5-minute call? No 2-minute call? Hey, how about a 1-minute call? No. 10 seconds left, by the way. 10. Not. He hits the muscle buster and he can't capitalize because he didn't know how much time was left. 3, 2, 1. Time limit draw. The second 1 hour time limit draw. We are 0-2 in this series. No one has won. No one has lost. Both matches ended with one guy hitting their big move, having the guy beat, but unable to capitalize for the pinfall. Mirroring finishes, which you might, it's like, okay, 2 hours to get the story across, but it was just beautifully told. It makes sense. And time logic would say, hey, we got to have a third one. And as this show closes out, it kind of cuts, to later in the night when they're both backstage recovering. Punk's like, I want a third match and I want no time limits. We need to have a no time limit match to see who's truly the best. And then they cut to Joe separately. Joe's like, nah. Joe's like, again, he's like, I don't have to beat you. You have to beat me. You had your chance. You failed. That was your last chance. So we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, so that's very open-ended. Maybe. Or maybe it's ended. Who knows? You'll just have to keep listening to find out, everybody. But again, I think we've talked about it. Just another tremendous match. I don't know what else is it. Again, just rooted in genuine, just, I want to beat you. The world title, the Ring of Honor title, if anything else, if there's any takeaway here, that Ring of Honor title. The prestige that has been built. The last champion was Xavier. Where's Xavier now? At this point. Okay. I know where he is now. But at this point in 2004, I don't even know if he's in the company anymore. It was in a very different spot when he was champion. He had some pretty good matches. Shout out to Xavier. He was a great talent. But it was very sports entertainment-y. He had his prophecy guys around him, and it was very whatever. Joe, man, it took a while to kick in, I will say. We're just about 2 years. I think we're 20 months into his reign at this point or something like that. And it took a while to kick in. But Joe, his matches with Homicide. His match with Christopher Daniels. Match with Doug Williams. Dan Moff. Paul London, among others, among many others, Rocky Romero, Ricky Reyes, I think I don't know. He's defended the title very, very, a lot of times. It's not one of these title reigns where it's like, oh, I'll defend it maybe once a quarter and then we'll figure it out. No, Joe's had a very heavy schedule. He's been defending it against a lot of different people, but this program with Punk has made that title feel like something that you gotta have. It's elevated Ring of Honor as a company, it's elevated that title, and it's elevated both Samoa Joe and CM Punk. There are no negatives from anything that has happened here, other than Joe stealing from Jey Uso. But outside of that, damn near the most perfect match I've ever seen. Now that's a conversation that could be a whole different podcast in itself, but I mean, and recency bias aside, one of the best matches I've ever seen in my life. Better than the first match. First match is great too. First match is, again, another one of the best matches. Second match, I think, takes the cake. It just has everything that I personally want in a wrestling match. And again, to go back to the Mick Foley, Ricky Steamboat thing, hardcore versus pure wrestling. We had a great hardcore styled I Quit match between Jimmy Jacobs and Alex Shelley, and we had a great pure wrestling match between Samoa Joe and CM Punk. Both styles were represented, and I think the ultimate takeaway here with everything is that every style of wrestling can be great. There are great hardcore matches, great pure matches, great singles matches, great tag team matches. In my opinion, like if the question is that like, well, hardest part of the ring, well, what do you prefer? What do I prefer? Hardcore wrestling or pure wrestling? The answer, like, it's a very, people roll their eyes, but it's like, I like both. Like when it comes to wrestling, I'm not watching matches in a vacuum. I'm not a guy that's like, oh, dude, you got to watch this DPW match. It was so sick. Okay, but like, what is the backstory? What's the context? How has each person gotten to this point? What are the ramifications of this match? Especially if it's a promotion or something that I'm not very familiar with. Like, I don't have any like emotional connection to the characters or the titles or the ranking or like whatever, right? To me, when I sit down and watch wrestling, I want to watch a wrestling card. I want to watch a series of wrestling matches. And you hear the old time-tested thing, like wrestling is a buffet. And to me, that's like a very good representation of what I seek in pro wrestling. If I sit down and watch a wrestling card, I don't want to watch 8 pure wrestling matches. Let's say it's like a card of 8 matches. I don't want to watch 8 pure singles matches. I don't want to watch 8 hardcore matches. I don't want to watch 8 tag team matches. I want a pure match. I want a tag team match. I want a hardcore match. I want soap opera stuff. I want big match feel. I want comedy. I want a mixture of a couple different things. I want men. I want women. I want a fatal 4-way. I want a singles. Give me a little taste of everything. Don't let it get too monotonous because, again, what we've just talked about here, different styles of wrestling can be both great. Well, in this case, maybe the pure wrestling, I would give the edge to the hardcore wrestling, but there's other cases where I'll give hardcore fucking, Mick Foley versus Triple H, Royal Rumble 2000. A great hardcore match. It's a better match than any pure match that they've had against each other. We just watched Moxley and Hangman at All In 2025. One of the best, again, another one of the best matches I've ever seen. Very violent, very hardcore. But on that same card, you had Mercedes Moné and Toni Storm have a great pure match. Kenny Omega and Okada on that same card as well. Another great pure match. Wrestling is so fun because there's so many different styles. There's so many different textures and flavors you can give to it. And to me, the best type of wrestling is wrestling that I can get emotionally invested in. And whatever that conduit, whatever that medium is to get me there, can be a pure, can have thumbtacks, can have arm drags, can have fire, can have whatever the fuck, right? So I think Ring of Honor, like this period of Ring of Honor is just so fun to watch because they do so many different things so well. And I'm gonna sit on this opinion for a little bit. It's not. I feel like I still have to watch a little bit more of this era of Ring of Honor to really solidify this opinion. But I'm gonna say something right here. I think Ring of Honor does hardcore wrestling better than ECW ever did. Sit on that one for a second. Now, is it apples and apples? Not necessarily. ECW was very cutting edge for its time. You could argue Ring of Honor is able to do these kind of hardcore matches because of what ECW did. Sure. I mean, it's the same goddamn, or at least it was, the same company doing the thing. RF Video, but I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Ring of Honor does hardcore wrestling better than ECW ever did. And I know there's still a lot of hardcore stuff that I haven't seen yet. All of the CZW versus Ring of Honor stuff, which we have not yet gotten to. Later, I mean, the ladder wars between the Briscoes and Stenerico. At this point, we've already seen that barbed wire match between Steve Corino and Homicide. That crazy street fight between the Second City Saints and the Prophecy. There's been matches with the Carnage Crew and the Hit Squad. They've had classics against each other. It's a lot of good stuff. A lot of good stuff is what I'm saying. So, but that's pretty much the bulk of it, man. Ring of Honor, October 2004. We'll touch, well, what else? There's a few other things that are worth lightly touching on. But ultimately, those two matches really just kind of put this weekend towards the top of history, of the Ring of Honor history so far. So, Matt Sydal was kind of made on this weekend, I would say, who is, of course, still going at it today. The former Evan Bourne. Matt Sydal would be a very prominent member of Ring of Honor from this point forward. I mean, I think he eventually joins Generation Next, if I have that correctly. But he would be a constant fixture even beyond that. So, but there was a match between Trent Acid and Matt Sydal where it was Sydal's coming out party. Like, he had the crowd in the palm of his hand with these crazy, he's doing the crazy stomp to the floor. Like, Trent was like tied up in the turnbuckles, and then Sydal hits like this, the low key, what does he call it? The Warrior's Way, the mushroom stomp, whatever it's called, but he hits it to the floor. But then Trent Acid hits him with a lawn dart against the barricade. Then inside the ring, Sydal hits a corkscrew lion salt for a 2 count. Crowd's loving it. Crowd is loving it. I can't really give you the proper significance of this without you hearing the crowd. But Trent goes for his inverted brain buster, which has finished off a bunch of different people. But Sydal does the sickest fucking counter. He because his back is to Trent. Sydal does this leg trip and then rolls Trent forward into this crazy roll up for the 1, 2, 3. So just a lot of really impressive offense, really fun stuff from Sydal here. And to me, it's because Sydal's been kind of a guy he's been thrown in these 6-man scramble matches, whatever, do your moonsaults, whatever the fuck. But it feels like the crowd was really with him here. So it is that felt very significant here. And I think it is worth bringing up. Also, a rarity. We got a women's match on this weekend. I believe it was night 2. Yes, night 2. Tracy Brooks versus Daisy Hayes. So Daisy Hayes actually was, I don't know if it was in real life, but he was, at least in kayfabe, she was Matt Sydal's girlfriend. So that kind of ties in pretty smoothly there. Tracy Brooks, the girlfriend of CM Punk, which, if you're wondering how this match was able to happen, I'll tell you. But just I want to give this match a shout out because in 2004, man, I mean, you know where women's wrestling's at. And if you think Jerry Lawler is misogynistic and gross on commentary, you should take a listen to Gabe Sapolsky. Jesus fucking Christ, dude. He can't not just be like, oh, I know these ladies are pretty hot. They got nice asses, but you wouldn't know it, but they can actually wrestle too. Like, God, easy, buddy. But a very smooth chain wrestling between these two, just very comic, like complex counters and arm drags and arm bars, very smooth, like back and forths. Like it was so quick. It's hard to take notes on, but very, very fun display of technical wrestling by two women, which is something that you haven't really seen in Ring of Honor. I mean, Mickie James was there in the very early days, but she didn't really have a lot of dancing partners. But so it was cool to see two women have a pretty good match here. It was pretty quick, but it was a fun showcase here. And ultimately, Daisy Hayes hits Tracy with a stunner, but then Tracy comes right back with a big lariat for the win. So Tracy Brooks gets the win. I don't want to harp on her connection with CM Punk, but yeah, because Tracy Brooks had some talent to her, but she gets the win here. I just want to shout out that match because it was cool to see two women having a proper match here in 2004 Ring of Honor. It was a rarity, so it was definitely worth mentioning. Generation Next and the Rottweilers, two factions that have been building up the past couple months and have never really come to a head. They're both heel factions, but they come to a head here on night 2. Generation Next, represented by Jack Evans and Roderick Strong, taking on the Rottweilers, Homicide and Rocky Romero. Just a really fun match. I mean, not a ton to say about this one. I love the double team stuff from Generation Next. Roddy Strong and Jack Evans, they're kind of like the B squad of Generation Next. You got Aries in the world title picture. You got Alex Shelley, who's kind of been portrayed as the leader of this group. And then you have Jack Evans and Roddy Strong. They made for a really great tag team. Roddy tossing Jack up into a standing 450 Phoenix Splash deal. Jack Evans, when he got the hot tag, they did this double team like Death Valley Driver. Like Roddy hit Rocky with a Death Valley Driver, but then Jack Evans came off with a stomp off the top rope before he hit it. So a lot of really fun chaining of moves here between both these guys. Homicide hits the lariat on the Jack Evans, making him do a full 360, not a 180, a full 360 after this lariat. And the ending stretch of this match was particularly sick. Roddy hits Homicide with the gut check and then hits this crazy, like, razor's edge into a cutter onto Rocky Romero. Just so smooth. It felt so impactful. Homicide right back in there, hits Roddy with the lariat. But then Jack Evans hits a 630 onto Rocky Romero for the win. So Generation Next gets the win over the Rottweilers, which is big deal. Big deal. Rottweilers have been very heavy in the world title scene. So for Jack Evans and Roderick Strong specifically to get a win over them, felt like a big deal. You would think that would earn him a tag team title match, which I'm guessing that's where we're going. But we'll see. But then Homicide gets on the mic after the word. He's like, hey, everybody, look, for real, though, I'm going to give them respect. You know, I know we're kind of dickheads, but I'm going to give these guys respect. I want to shake your hand. And of course, this leads to Homicide giving Jack Evans the most brutal cop killer I've ever seen. Rocky takes Roddy out. And so the Rottweilers, I guess, get their heat back a little bit. But Generation X get the W. Get this funny visual of them scraping Jack Evans out of the ring. Like, because Jack Evans was laid out in the middle of the ring. And I guess Roddy like pulled him by the feet out of the ring, but you couldn't see Roddy. So you just see Jack Evans just getting pulled like by no one. I'll clip it. It was a funny moment, but yeah. So all those things on top of the major bullet points that we talked about in bulk here made for a very fun weekend of Ring of Honor. I like this era that we're sitting in. It's making me look forward to the next few shows. So I like where we're at. Spoiler alert, we might be getting towards the end of a certain title run, so we'll see what happens after that. But a lot of good stuff on the horizon for Ring of Honor and a lot of stuff that we've talked about in the past. Like I said, if you haven't listened to previous episodes, I strongly suggest you give them a listen. A lot of fun talking this era of Ring of Honor. The kind of transition from the early stuff, which is pretty rough, but with a few hidden gems in there, into this era where it's more consistently good. It's been fun. It's been fun living through that transition. It's been fun seeing this company grow in real time. A lot of good stuff here. Ring of Honor, it's maybe in terms of me having fun watching wrestling, I don't know if it gets better than watching this era of Ring of Honor. It's been a lot of fun. So it's been a lot of fun having you here, ladies and gentlemen, and everything else. Appreciate everybody for tuning in today. Like I said, if you're watching on YouTube, give it a like, give it a comments, Spotify, rate, review, follow me at Apron Bump on all the social medias. And with that, I think that's all Daddy has for you guys today. I'll bid you adieu. Appreciate everybody. Mwah. I'm hard.
Yeah. It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get it started. It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get it started.